Tead mina? Aga mina sõitsin ühe kodulehe peal.
There was a good road to the shore, but we weren't allowed to go there. Border guards watched all access routes to the sea, but they didn't have searchlights everywhere. They couldn't close off the coast completely. Because the shore wasn't mined, they tried to keep it plowed, but it was too big of a task, and they were unable to stick to it. Still, there were periods when very many sectors were plowed. I'm a local boy, and I know every rock on the seashore. We didn't depart from a section patrolled by the border guard. We left instead from a place where there was a torpedo training area.
Seal me läksime mitte piirivalve, vaid seal tegid õppust torpeedokaatorite mingisugune grupp. Kurat, me läksime sinna kohe õppuste sinna sektorisse sisse, kurat.
Sõda oli paisanud eestlasi itta ja läände.
World War II scattered Estonians to both the east and the west. There were about 20 million displaced persons in Europe. There were 50,000 refugees in Germany and about 20,000 in Sweden. They set up organizations and schools to help preserve the culture. In 1947, the refugees began to be resettled by international aid organizations. During a period of 5 years, 30,000 Estonians emigrated to the USA, Canada, and Australia. Usually, the Western countries didn't hand over Baltic refugees to the communists, but there were occasions when this took place with Ukrainians, Russians, and Cossacks. Forced repatriation was feared like death itself. The party and the KGB tried to lure refugees to return home. They even published a newspaper called Return to the Homeland. Propaganda broadcasts were also made. Respected prominent people were pressured into turning out propaganda to try to influence refugees to return home. Is it better to be a chip of wood blown about by the wind or to dedicate yourself to your homeland and people? The homeland's pastures and coasts, workshops and factories, mines and schools are open to all honest returning Estonians. The homeland will provide lodging and work. Dear compatriots, end your senseless and miserable existence abroad. The homeland beckons. Welcome to the homeland, to Soviet Estonia. Let's start going, fellas. Our homes await. A few men with pale faces were sitting in the cell. Where did you come from? How? Hasn't the war begun yet? It was strange. I had an argument with them in Vasalemma prison. These gentlemen truly believed that war was just about to break out, that they had to hang on just a little bit longer. They believed that the Americans would come to help us. This kind of psychosis was the determining factor in making the decision to stay here and wait. Otherwise, some would have tried to escape. But they were great guys anyway. For example, there were Bernhard Linde and Evald Kulm, who before the war was a bus driver for the Tallinn YMCA and drove to Paris.
Enne sõjaaegne selle noortemeeste kristliku ühingu rahvusvahelise liini bussijuht Tallinn-Pariis. Ja need olid Bernhard Lindega ühepikkused mehed.
They were both tall and the ceiling was low. They couldn't stand up straight. Even I, when careless, hit my head against the ceiling.
Nad käisid pidevalt, nad ei saanudki ennast sirgeks, tähendab, sõna otseses mõttes peaga, tähendab, minulgi oli, tähendab, nii et kui lohakas olin, siis käis pea vastu lage.
Linda Allesar, the best writer of Leninist essays, does her work with love. Soviet culture had to be nationalist in form and socialist in content. The socialist content was shrill Stalinist party propaganda, the nationalist form blatant Russification. Other than political literature, only 38 Estonian novels appeared in print in 4 years, but 45 Russian translations were published. Estonian composers and actors visited the Volta factory. Meeting you inspires us enthusiastically to create new works that interpret the lives of the heroic Soviet people, our glorious party, and its leader, Comrade Stalin. This meeting between composers and industrial workers is a useful and essential event. We wish that there were more such meetings. We also wish that there were more artistic works dealing with the lives and endeavors of the workers. The pressure applied in literature, music, art, and science was part of the struggle against bourgeois nationalism. Some intellectuals participated, but not all. The choral singing and song festival traditions continued. The fine arts were given a high priority since they served propagandistic purposes. Some intellectuals were taken advantage of and bribed with various privileges. Stalin firmly carries the flag. He is the one we love. He gives a vow to all nations, the war will not begin. I was the director of a collective farm in 1951. We were very productive and had a large herd of cattle. We needed a security guard, but we were informed that the official quota for security guards had been filled. The Estonian State Planning Committee was powerless. They had to ask Moscow to increase the security guard quota. Finally, a written response came from Moscow stating permission granted to hire one extra security guard in the Estonian SSR. He was assigned to us, and it bore Stalin's signature. It was, of course, a stamped signature, not a personal one. I went home and shook old Josep Kempi's hand and said to him, "Well done, now do your duty. You have been personally assigned by Comrade Stalin."
Sind on isiklikult määranud ametisse seltsimees Stalin.
On March 5, 1953, the heart of the genius of humanity, the mind and heart of millions of workers, our wise and beloved leader, the great Stalin, stopped. His death brought sincere tears to the eyes of millions of Soviet people. On the streets of Moscow, mourning crowds trampled 400 people to death while bidding Stalin farewell. But Estonians had to try to conceal their joy. They hoped that things would change after the tyrant's death. Party leaders in the Kremlin began to divide up power: Beria, Malenkov, Khrushchev. The most powerful was the head of the secret police, Marshal Lavrenti Pavlovich Beria, who became the head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Ministry of Security. People feared the worst from Beria, since he symbolized repression. Actually, it was he who had the best understanding of what was really going on. To increase the Red Empire's control over border areas, he tried to promote local ethnic personnel. Local Estonians could now function in the Soviet system. The strict border control was relaxed. On June 26th, Beria was arrested by his comrades in arms.
Juba 26. juunil võitluskaaslased arreteerisid Beria.
Matusepäeval me olime metsas kell 12.
On the day of Stalin's funeral, we were working in the forest. At 12 noon, we were to mourn with 5 minutes of silence. We were ordered to take off our caps. Beside me stood a former officer of Vlasov's army. He was fed up with the Soviets, and he told the guard to screw off. He refused to take his cap off. We had to lie down as shots rang out.
Ja see ütles, et pošol nahhui, kurat. Ja ei võtta ära metsi peast. See andis käsu, konvoi, kurat, laski seest. Ja siis ta ütles, Karlussa, kurat, sneeg.
The Tallinn-Kalinin locomotive repair shop. The general meeting of the shop workers collective joined unanimously with all enraged Soviet workers in condemning the activities of the traitor Beria and his conspirators. The Rakvere tractor depot was the first one in our republic to publish its own newspaper. This Bolshevik paper deals with all questions that interest collective farmers. Everyone must be ready to lend a hand on the large fields of the expanded collective farms. When massive collectivization began in